The Cleveland Browns right now, they're 1-4, and there's a really good chance that they don't make it to the playoffs as long as they continue to roll with Deshaun Watson as their starting quarterback. Deshaun, he just doesn't have it anymore. He's never going to revert back to the same player that we saw playing for the Texans when he was an MVP candidate. And the Browns, they got scammed for $230 million fully guaranteed. And at this point, you just need to take your loss, take it on the chin, accept the fact that Deshaun Watson is never going to be good again, and bench him in favor of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston isn't the best quarterback in the world, but he's good enough where with the team that you have around him, you could turn your season around and still make it to the playoffs. Last season, you went to the postseason with old man Joe Flacco coming off the couch. If you can make it to the postseason with Joe Flacco, you can definitely make it with Jameis Winston. The thing with Jameis Winston is that as aggressive as what he is and as many mistakes as he tends to make, he can make up for him the following drive with touchdowns. And with you having a good group of wide receivers, you got Judy, you got Amari Cooper for the time being, you got Njoku, you got Jerome Ford, and your offensive line, as bad as what they've played, a lot of those sacks that Deshaun Watson is taking is because he's not getting the football out fast enough, or he just blatantly is running directly into sacks. And it's good to see that Deshaun has a little bit of that elite mobility still from his Houston days, but he's not really utilizing it correctly. You know, anytime Deshaun Watson is extending plays and he's not getting outside the pocket, when he's running around within the pocket, the dude just runs into pressure. He runs directly into sacks. Like, a couple of those sacks that Deshaun Watson took against the Washington Commanders were on him, at least 3 or 4 of them, because the dude just doesn't have good pocket presence. And he never has been known as a quarterback that can beat you from within the pocket. A lot of his game has always been, you know, making things happen off script. With Jameis Winston, he's a better pocket quarterback than what Deshaun Watson is, because mobility is not really a big part of Jameis Winston's game. Jameis Winston, with the team that the Browns have right now, you insert him into the starting lineup, and there's a good chance that you probably could be a 9, maybe 10 win team at the end of the season, because Jameis Winston is a better quarterback than what Deshaun Watson is right now. As tough as that is to hear if you're a Browns fan, it's the truth. But the reason why you refuse to start the better quarterback is because you got so much tied up to Deshaun Watson financially that you got to make sure that you get everything that you paid for out of Deshaun Watson, and that you get the value that you gave up when you got Deshaun Watson out of him. And that's not going to happen. And if the Browns are seriously committed to winning this season, they should stop doing all this politicking and start the better quarterback. Deshaun Watson, we've seen enough of this dude in the Browns uniform to know that he sucks now. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Do you know how crazy it is that Daniel Dimes has played better than Deshaun Watson, and the Giants aren't even that better than what the Cleveland Browns are? You can blame the defense all you want to, but what the hell do you want the defense to do when they got to carry a team that has a non-existent offense with a quarterback that nobody really seems to be inspired by? When you hear Jameis Winston talk to those teammates, they listen, they perk their ears up. Jameis Winston is one of those dudes that people love to play with. He brings an infectious energy that makes him super likable, that you want to give your all to him. But with Deshaun Watson, with the off-the-field issues that he has going on, the never-ending sexual assault allegations that he always has coming out against him, it just seems like it's hard for him to mentally be there anymore. And maybe that's the reason why his play has fallen off so badly over these last couple of years, because when the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson, they thought that they finally found the missing piece to them not being able to make it to the Super Bowl. And instead, you trade away Baker Mayfield and you dug yourself in a bigger hole when it comes to the quarterback position. There were some people saying that when Jacoby Brissett had to start for Deshaun Watson, Deshaun never should have played that season because Jacoby Brissett was better based off the system that Kevin Stefanski has built around Deshaun Watson. The problem isn't Stefanski. Stefanski is the best coach that the Browns have had in 2 decades. You weren't going nowhere until you hired Kevin Stefanski. If anything, you should give Kevin Stefanski a lifelong contract because your franchise has a great history of hiring awful coaches. So the fact that the Browns were able to hire Kevin Stefanski and he's given them the most success that they've had since 2002 shows you that Kevin Stefanski isn't the problem. It's the quarterback that he has that's the problem, because he's forced to make it work with the quarterback that just isn't a starting caliber quarterback anymore in today's NFL. Jameis Winston, if you start him right now, you immediately have a great chance to turn your season around. You make your offense more explosive because you got a quarterback that can generate more plays in the vertical passing game, just because we know that Jameis Winston has a really good arm. He's a really accurate downfield thrower. It's just that sometimes he just doesn't have good decision making, and that can get him into a bind at times. But if you're the Cleveland Browns, you take Jameis Winston throwing 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and you put 20, 24 on the board because you got a good enough defense that can bail you out when Jameis Winston makes mistakes. You know, the problem is that Deshaun Watson is holding back the Cleveland Browns, and they refuse to do anything about it. They refuse to allow this man to stink up the rest of the organization. It's pretty clear that his teammates don't really have a lot of respect for him. You know, look at the way the offensive line blocks for him. When he's scolding at guys, like, guys aren't receptive to it. When guys are getting yelled at by Deshaun Watson, they're looking at the dude like, bro, like, the hell are you yelling at me for? But when Jameis Winston was yelling at that same offensive lineman that Deshaun was yelling at, and their loss to the Raiders, you know, the dude was a little bit more receptive to it. But when Deshaun Watson's yelling at you, it's like, bro, like, who are you to yell at me? Like, you're not good. You're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem. You know, like, Deshaun Watson, it's just, I don't get how the Browns can continue to just allow this dude to put up dud after dud and still continue to start him and say that he gives them the best chance to win over Jameis Winston. At this point, you are better off keeping Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley, you can make the argument that he's no worse than Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is probably the worst quarterback in the NFL right now. And the only quarterback who you can say has been just as bad, if not worse than Deshaun, is probably Jacoby Brissett or Trevor Lawrence. And even Trevor Lawrence has played some pretty good football over these last couple of weeks. But it's time to bench Deshaun Watson and start Jameis Winston if the Browns are serious about trying to win this year.